On February 8, 2026 at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, California, the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots were locked in a defensive battle in the third quarter of Super Bowl LX. Seattle led 12-0. The Patriots had the ball. Their young quarterback Derick May was trying to step up into a collapsing pocket on third down when a Seahawks linebacker burst through the line, dropped him for a sack, reached behind his back and fired an imaginary arrow into the sky, then looked down and realized he had also forced a fumble. His teammate Byron Murphy too fell on it. 5 plays later the Seahawks scored the game's only offensive touchdown. The momentum never came back for New England. Seattle won 29-13 and lifted the Lombardi Trophy for the second time in franchise history. The linebacker who made that play was Derick Hall. Number 58. 24 years old. 3 years in the league. In his first Super Bowl. And the moment the final whistle blew, his mother Stacy Gooden-Crandle tapped him on the shoulder. They hugged. And then both of them broke down crying right there on the field. If you do not know why that hug is one of the most emotionally loaded moments in recent Super Bowl history, then you do not know Derick Hall's story. And you need to. Because Derick Hall should not be alive. Not because of injury or accident or illness later in life. From the very first second of his existence, the medical establishment said there was no reason to expect him to survive. And every single thing that has happened since, the childhood, the football, the NFL, the Super Bowl ring, is the product of one woman who looked at a doctor's recommendation and said no. Derick Hall was born on March 19, 2001 in Gulfport, Mississippi. He was born 23 weeks into his mother's pregnancy. A full-term pregnancy is 40 weeks. He arrived 17 weeks early. 4 months before his body was ready to exist outside the womb. He weighed 2 pounds and 1 ounce. For context, a standard bag of sugar weighs 2 pounds. He was smaller than that. He was born with no heartbeat. Dead on arrival. Doctors worked frantically to resuscitate him. They got his heart beating. He was placed immediately on life support. And then they found something else. A brain bleed. Bleeding on his brain. In a 2-pound infant who had just been resuscitated after arriving without a heartbeat. The doctors sat down with his mother Stacy Gooden-Crandle and told her what they believed the reality was. They gave her son a 1% chance to survive. And they told her that even if he did survive, they believed he would likely spend his life in a permanent vegetative state. They recommended she sign a do-not-resuscitate order. They recommended she allow them to discontinue life support. They were not being cruel. They were being medical professionals looking at a set of numbers that said this child is not going to make it, and even if he does, the life ahead of him will be defined by profound limitation. Stacy Gooden-Crandle heard all of that. And she said no. She said it plainly. She told reporters years later that she had to give him a shot at living. That she had to give him a shot at being someone who could change the world because apparently God had a plan for this kid. She refused to sign the DNR. She refused to allow life support to be discontinued. She said she believed in prayer and she believed that God can do anything, and she was going to give her son his best chance at life. Derick Hall spent the next 5 months in the neonatal intensive care unit. 5 months. Most pregnancies are 9 months total. He spent more than half that equivalent time in an incubator on a ventilator. Too small. Too early. Too fragile. Surrounded by machines keeping him alive while his body caught up to where it should have been. His grandmother Bobby Brown was there through all of it. The whole family was. She described it later as all hands on deck. And she told reporters about the moment. She knew something was different. She stuck her hand into the incubator and Derick grabbed it. A 2-pound infant on a ventilator with a brain bleed who had been born without a heartbeat reached out and grabbed his grandmother's finger and held on. She said that was the first time she knew he was going to make it. After 5 months, Derick Hall went home. He was not out of the woods. The brain bleed had healed, but his lungs were compromised from being born so early. Throughout his childhood he battled asthma. Frequent attacks. Hospitalizations that became a regular part of his family's life. His mother balanced raising him while working full-time and attending school at night to pay for his medical needs and his future. She was his nurse and his provider and his believer all at the same time. And then something unexpected happened. Something that would change everything. Derick Hall started playing football. Not because he was big. Not because someone spotted him and said that kid is going to be special. He started playing because of his lungs. His doctors told him that physical activity, specifically running, could help build his lung capacity. Could help the asthma. Could give his compromised respiratory system the workout it needed to get stronger. So at 4 years old, he started playing flag football. Not to become an athlete. To be able to breathe. He said it himself. He told reporters after the Super Bowl that he started playing the game just to be able to get his lung capacity up. Just to be able to run around a little bit. That is the origin of a Super Bowl champion's football career. A doctor's recommendation for a child who could not breathe properly. A 2-pound baby who was not supposed to survive, running around a flag football field in Gulfport, Mississippi, learning to breathe. At 9 years old he moved to tackle football. And it became immediately clear that whatever had been happening to his body during those years of surviving and fighting and building lung capacity, something extraordinary had been built. He was fast. He was strong. He had a motor that did not stop. A relentlessness that his teammates and coaches noticed immediately. Not because someone drilled it into him. Because he had been fighting since the day he arrived. He played high school football at Gulfport High School and became one of the most recruited defensive players in Mississippi. He chose Auburn University. And in 3 seasons as a Tiger he recorded 104 tackles, 13.5 sacks and forced 4 fumbles. He became one of the most dangerous pass rushers in college football. And in April 2023 the Seattle Seahawks selected him with the 37th overall pick in the 2nd round of the NFL Draft. Here is the detail about that pick that almost nobody knows. The Seahawks got that pick in the trade that sent Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos in 2022. One of the most talked about trades in recent NFL history, the deal that ended the Wilson era in Seattle and that many Seahawks fans were furious about at the time. The pick acquired in that trade became Derick Hall. A 2-pound baby from Gulfport who was not supposed to survive became a Seahawk because of a blockbuster trade. Football has a way of connecting things across time in ways nobody plans for. His first 2 seasons in the NFL were the story of a young pass rusher establishing himself. Solid rookie year. Strong second year with 8 sacks, 2 forced fumbles and a 36-yard fumble return for a touchdown against the Falcons in Week 7 of 2024 that announced him to the wider football world in a single electric moment. By 2025 he was a starter. A leader on a Seattle defense that became one of the most dominant units in the league. The Seahawks allowed just 17.2 points per game during the regular season, the fewest of any team in the NFL. And at the center of that defense, wearing number 58, was a linebacker who had been born without a heartbeat. And had spent his first 5 months of life on a ventilator. But the story that happened around the Super Bowl is the one that takes this from a great football story to something genuinely profound. In October 2025, a few months before the Super Bowl, something happened to Derick Hall's teammate Byron Murphy too. Murphy's fiancée gave birth to their first child, a daughter named Dani Azaria, 3 months premature. She weighed 2 pounds and 5 ounces. She was placed in intensive care immediately. Murphy was terrified. He had a newborn daughter smaller than a football fighting for her life in an incubator. And then he got a text from Derick Hall. Hall sent his teammate pictures. Photos of himself as a 2-pound newborn in the NICU at Gulfport. A baby so small you could hold him in one hand. A baby with a brain bleed who had arrived without a heartbeat and been given a 1% chance to live. He had already told Murphy his story before. But he felt his teammate needed a reminder right now. A reminder that Murphy's daughter was facing odds that Hall had already beaten. That the size of a baby in an incubator is not the size of the fight inside them. Murphy later said about the moment that Hall told him, "It is a hell of a story. Being a preemie born with no heartbeat, the doctor telling your parents you are going to be a vegetable, to being a Super Bowl champ." Murphy called it crazy and said it is all God. Murphy's daughter Dani Azaria spent 2 months in intensive care. She went home before Christmas. And on February 8, 2026, 3 days after her father learned she was healthy and thriving and had grown to over 9 pounds, Byron Murphy too stood on the same Super Bowl field as Derick Hall, and they made the play together that broke the game open. Hall forced the fumble. Murphy recovered it. 2 men whose lives were connected by a premature baby, standing in the biggest moment of their professional lives, winning the Super Bowl together. After the game, reporters found Derick Hall and asked him about his mother. About what this moment meant for the woman who had refused to sign the DNR order 24 years ago. Who had sat in that hospital and said no to the doctors and no to the statistics and yes to the 1% chance that her son was going to make it. He could barely get through it. He called her the unsung hero. The unsung warrior through this whole process. He said she always fought for him and she never gave up. He said what the game had done for him and his family he will never be able to repay. He said you always have love and respect for the game, and he feels like he showed it every single time he stepped on the field. And then his mother tapped him on the shoulder. And they hugged. And they both cried. She had been at every game. From the very first flag football game when he was 4 years old and learning to breathe on a field in Gulfport, Mississippi, all the way to the biggest game in American football. She never missed one. Not one. There is one more chapter to this story that deserves to be told. Because Derick Hall did not take what happened to him and keep it to himself. Elderly people could not access clean water to take their medications. Derick Hall donated his entire nil earnings, the money he was making from his name, image and likeness as a college athlete, to emergency relief. Every dollar. He helped organize the delivery of 5 semi-trucks loaded with water, disaster relief kits and essential supplies to the people of Jackson. Mississippi State Representative Jeffrey Hulum III said Hall saw his state hurting and stepped up. He made sure those supplies reached people in need. He was a college student. Not yet a professional athlete. Not yet earning an NFL salary. And he gave everything he had because he grew up in Mississippi and he understood what it meant for a community to need something that nobody was giving them. In 2024 he took it further. He launched the Derick Hall 1% Foundation. A nonprofit dedicated to supporting premature infants and their families through the financial and emotional weight of a NICU stay. Named after the odds he was given. Turning the statistic that was supposed to define his death into the name of an organization built to help children survive the same fight he survived. His grandmother Bobby Brown, the woman who stuck her hand in the incubator and felt him hold on, said something after the Super Bowl that captures the whole story in one sentence. She said good things come out of something bad sometimes. And then she said just think if we had decided not to have him. Look what we would have missed. A 2-pound baby with no heartbeat and a brain bleed and a 1% chance of survival, born to a mother who refused to let him go, raised in Gulfport with asthma and hospital stays and flag football games to build his lungs, drafted by the Seattle Seahawks in a pick that came from a trade everyone was angry about at the time, standing on a Super Bowl field with a teammate whose premature daughter he had already helped through the same fight he had survived, making the play that broke the game open. Hugging his mother on the field, and carrying it all back home to Mississippi in the form of a nonprofit built to give other families the same chance his mother gave him. That is Derick Hall's story. And his mother said it best. She said she knows he is going to do great things and change the world. Looking at everything he has already done, it is hard to argue with her.